I'd like to call this meeting to order. Clerk, please read the statement.
The meeting of the Township Council for Monday, October 22nd, 2018. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public and the press on January 5th, 2018, and was posted in the municipal building in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-7.
Roll call.
Councilmember Ooms?
Here.
Councilmember Kadish?
Here.
Councilmember Van Tassel? Not present. Councilmember Allberger?
Here.
Council President Murphy?
Here. Please rise to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This evening, we have a proclamation. If there are any members from the VFW or the Vietnam Veterans of America, if you could please come forward. Is there? Are you? Mayor, would you like to read the proclamation?
Sure.
Do you have it?
Glad to.
We just want to see you stand again.
Whereas the freedoms we enjoy as Americans have been purchased and maintained at a high price throughout history. And whereas since the establishment of the original 13 states, Americans have been willing to fight and die to preserve their individual rights as guaranteed in the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And whereas we owe a great debt to those who have served in the defense of this nation. And whereas throughout generations their sacrifices have preserved our unique form of government dedicated to human rights and respect for the individual. And whereas for many this sacrifice has ended in permanent injury or death, yet their spirit remains in the continued preservation of our freedoms and the promise of liberty established as an example for all the oppressed people and persons of the world. And whereas in honor of those dedicated men and women, we pledge our continued defense of our nation so that their sacrifice will stand before the entire world as a tribute to the spirit and determination of a people dedicated to the principles of freedom and democracy. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Vernon Township Council do hereby urge all citizens to honor our veterans and rededicate themselves to the preservation of our liberties under the Constitution, given under my hand in these free United States and the Township of Vernon, State of New Jersey, on this 22nd day of October 2018, to which I've caused the seal of Township of Vernon to be affixed, and have made this proclamation public. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to public comment. If there's anyone from the public that has a comment, it's limited to agenda items only. You'll have 3 minutes. May I have a motion to open to public?
Motion.
I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there anyone that would like to step up and address any agenda items? Seeing no one, may I have a motion to close to public? Motion. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we move on to our meeting minutes. We have the emergency meeting minutes of October 10th, 2018, the emergency meeting executive session minutes of October 10th, 2018, the regular meeting minutes of October 11th, 2018, and executive session minutes of October 11th, 2018. May I have a motion to adopt the regular and executive minutes of October 10th and 11th meetings?
Motion. Could you separate?
Certainly. What did you want separated?
11 through 10.
Okay. May I have a motion to adopt the regular and executive session meeting minutes from October 10th?
Motion.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Ooms?
Yes.
Councilmember Kadish?
Yes.
Councilmember Van Tassel is not present. Councilmember Allberger?
Yes.
Council President Murphy?
Yes. May I have a motion to adopt the regular and executive session meeting minutes of October 11th?
Motion.
I'll make the second. Roll call?
Yes.
Member Kadesh?
Abstain.
Councilmember Allberger?
Yes.
Council President?
Yes. Next, we have the consent agenda. Are there any resolutions that any of the council members need separated?
I have some questions.
Sure, we'll read them, and then you can ask.
Okay.
Resolution 18226, authorizing a date for municipal tax sale. This sets the tax sale for November 29th. Resolution 18227, authorizing electronic tax sale. This authorizes the tax sale to be conducted electronically. Resolution 18228, authorizing application and execution of the 2018 Drive Sober, Get Pulled Over year-end holiday crackdown, grant administered by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. This permits the township to apply for holiday crackdown grant. Resolution 18229, approval to submit a grant application and execute grant contracts with the New Jersey Department of Transportation for the Vernon Town Center Bike Walking Trails, Phase 1. This permits the township to apply for a bike trail grant. May I have a motion to adopt resolutions 18226 to 18229?
I'd like to ask some questions before I
We'll
vote on
do
that.
the motions, and then we'll have discussion.
Second.
Is there any discussion? What is your discussion?
Okay, wait a second. Wait 1 minute, give me a minute. Okay. Yes, question. What's the matching on this?
Excuse me?
Matching. Matching.
Oh, is it a matching grant
What's the matching on it?
on the trail?
On the trail, we don't know yet. It's to the DOT. We tried last year, took secondary to the actual street paving. So as I'm aware of, there may be some, like $15,000 that we could do with manpower.
But that would come back before the council.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
You can't accept the award without the council's approval.
Okay.
'Cause again, I can't give you the exact number because we don't know how much we would be receiving, if anything. But we felt it prudent to go ahead and apply for it and see what happens.
Okay. And these are all on this map here?
The same grant that we applied for last year, and we didn't get this grant. Instead, we got the grant to pave Wayway Yonda and Barry Lakes North.
Right, I chose that. But do we have all these properties that are outlined in it?
We have an easement that the MUA pipes are under. We actually own the easements. But a lot of the properties we do own.
Is there some in here that we're waiting?
Well, if we don't purchase other properties or easements, we'll just move it to the easements that we own.
And you'll be able to make that full loop then?
Yes.
Any other discussion? Is there any other discussion?
No, for me, no. Thank you.
Roll call?
Councilmember Ooms?
Yes.
Councilmember Kadesh?
Yes.
Councilmember Allberger?
Yes.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt consent agenda.
Next, we have introduction, first reading of a proposed ordinance. It's Ordinance 1828, amending Chapter 250-7, tax collector to include tax sale notice mailing costs. This ordinance permits the township to charge fees for the mailing of the tax sale notices. May I have a motion to introduce Ordinance 1828 with a public hearing on November 8th?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call?
Councilmember Ooms?
Yes.
Councilmember Kadesh?
Yes.
Councilmember Allberger?
Yes.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries to introduce ordinance 1828 with a public hearing on November 8th.
I have a question on that. How is the fee of $25 going to be collected?
I have to refer to the business administrator, which is not here tonight.
Electronically, I presume.
We started the training for everything online.
Well, there are many people that do pay electronically.
What's that?
Many people do pay their taxes electronically.
Well,
But-
that isn't.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying is so we'll bill them and then they can pay electronically. Next, we have items for discussion. Ordinance 1829. It's an ordinance of Township of Vernon, County of Sussex, State of New Jersey, creating Chapter 476 of the Municipal Code of the Township of Vernon entitled Short-Term Rentals, and amending Chapter 250 of the Municipal Code of the Township of Vernon to include short-term rental property application fees. Mayor Shortway, would you like to start the discussion on this?
We estimate there's approximately 146 short-term rentals within our township. At this time, they're not inspected. We don't know if they have smoke alarms and other fire prevention devices in them. We've had numerous complaints in the beginning of the year again about excessive parties, lack of parking. So as the residents came in and they spoke to me, we did extensive studying at other communities that enacted regulations for the short-term rentals, commonly known as Airbnb, but that's just the one title. So this, I feel we shouldn't just ban them like some communities have, because we are a four-season tourist community. And yet, with this ordinance, it's not going to supersede or go above what the lake communities want. The lake communities, the qualified private communities, do not want short-term rentals. That's up to them what they want. But I've seen pictures and I've seen ads for some short-term rental that's only a one-bedroom house trailer on it. So we're trying to get regulation for safety. Then it shouldn't be up to the taxpayers to pay for these inspections. It'll have to be up to that person that has that business, whether it be in the condominiums or a house in one of the lake communities, that it's allowed to. But we feel it's throughout the community that this is going on. We need to know some regulation. A lot of people, they buy their house and they have fears, although I know of no instance where a short-term rental occupant has caused a crime, but they're uncomfortable. And I feel if they're living in this house, they put everything they own into this house, they have children, they have a right to know, the town has a right to know, is that a short-term rental? Is it safe? Who's in it? Like you'll see, there's requirements. They have to submit who's staying there. They have to have a phone number. If there's a problem, who do we call? And we give them 2 times. If they're found guilty of violations of our codes, they will lose it for the next year, because there has to be some kind of negative consequence for not maintaining, like even garbage. We had one complaint that people just put out the garbage. It was all over the street because they didn't know what night it was, and the bears had a meal out of it. So we need to it exists. Unless you want to shut it down completely, I feel we have to regulate it and not shut it down, as I said. So by having the discussion, I would like the council's input. Email me, go through it, think about it. Also, the public input on it. I mean, I've received a lot. The majority of the public that's contacted me feel Vernon shouldn't have any of these short-term rentals.
Wait, can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
The majority of the residents that have contacted me with complaints feel we should not have any short-term rentals. But I don't think that's feasible for the type of community we live in.
Did these people have problems with?
Yes, like
In the
noise,
vicinity.
parking on the streets.
Was it more so people from communities or from, let's say, the Great Gorge Village?
All over.
It was all over. So it encompasses every.
But and I want to emphasize, with the qualified private communities, if they forbid it, we're not going to say yes. We'll go by their bylaws. But if somebody does it, there's going to be a consequence if they don't follow the regulations.
So what's to prevent somebody from not registering,
Fines. If they're
advertising?
found out, fines.
Okay.
Some communities have as much as $2,500 a day, even to advertise.
For not
we
getting
put
the
down
permit.
$1,000 a day. The council's going to have to decide if they want to go forward with this, what changes they want to meet, and so this way you can discuss it in public or send it to me, whatever discussion. I thought tonight would be a good night so the public hears it. And then also hear from the public.
You already have 146 going on right now.
That we suspect. We don't know there might be more,
There might
it could
be
be
more.
less.
So who,
It would be like outlawing it would be like trying to outlaw illness.
I think it's going to happen regardless, so we might as well regulate it, make sure it's safe, and then bring in the revenue to pay for the inspections.
But
I don't-
on a 2-story house, for instance, would you need to put fire escapes on?
It depends on the fire code. Fire inspector, fire marshal will have to go out there. He knows the fire codes. They're going to have to inspect it. But my point is that the general taxpayer should not have to pay for that inspection. It's a business cost, just like with the ABC licenses.
You know, once we go through this go to zoning or not?
Go to zoning. I do talk about starting like a subcommittee within zoning Because this year alone, on zoning, we've put the maintenance ordinance, the vacant building ordinance, the chicken ordinance, the soil fill ordinance. We put a lot of extra work on them to make our community better.
Yeah, they're going to be able to handle this.
You might have to have a part-time employee do it. I'm really against hiring a full-time, but it's also bringing a revenue stream in to do this.
That's
think the
provided
vacant-
they all sign up. I mean, you're estimating 146.
You know, the vacant building ordinance, I think that's brought in almost $30,000 so far from the banks. And where there's indicators that more houses are selling now because the banks want to unload those houses. Where I think Wantage already had the ordinance, and the banks were putting more priority selling their houses up there than in Vernon because there was no negative effect of not selling the house.
You have any questions?
Well, if you do rewrite this in 476-5, Article number 2, A2, make note that probably a line has to be removed. You don't have that department here.
That's why I could put Vernon.
Department of Property Improvement and Neighborhood Preservation.
That's why I would like to have a subcommittee in next year's budget of one person running it, under the authority of the zoning, of course. But we could just change that to Vernon zoning. Because I know we've asked a lot of the zoning department, we've enacted a lot of ordinances to improve our community. It's a lot of work.
Good if that permits, if we do hire somebody sustains the.
I just think you have three options. Ignore it, that's going on now. Ban it, or regulate it.
Well, I think like,
Regulation.
excuse me, what was that?
I'm in favor of regulation.
Yeah, I don't think banning it in our area is the best thing. Like I said, if in the lake communities, if they're, regulating where they're not allowing it, that's another
I
issue.
also think that just like you do any development, that adjoining neighbors would have to be consulted and informed and noticed in the same way property development takes place.
And even add to it. Well, I'd like to hear what the public has to say before I make a decision.
Yeah, well, if the council could read through it and see if they have any questions.
If the council has any comments, if they could provide them to us by a week from tonight, so we can incorporate them into a revised ordinance for introduction.
And the ordinance does get introduced and put on the website, so the public does have ample time to review it and have questions. But like I said, as with any other ordinance, it'll be some of the lake communities, possibly Great Gorge Village, that will have questions because, just like in Great Gorge, you're going through the guard booth. So, they know who's coming in and out. In some of the lake communities, you don't necessarily know that because they're going to private homes. So, but it's something that, they've been addressing. I know Highland Lakes was addressing it, at least a year or two ago.
I think it was back in June I spoke about it, where I was looking to do a municipal tax on it, like the occupancy tax of 6%, but the state has already done it. So I'm interested to see how much of that money would come back as revenue here, like we do already with the hotel rooms. So the state has moved forward. Some of the owners I've heard that have the short-term rentals, of course, they don't want any regulations.
Yeah, it's arduous. They're going to have to work for that.
Well, if you have no regulations on these, then you shouldn't really have any regulations on full-time rentals. So, and I mean, those are regulated.
I just think it's something we have to address.
Yeah. Anything else?
No.
So we'll move on to our second session of public comments. Again, your comments are limited to 3 minutes. If the public has any comments, it's open to any subject. May I have a motion to open to public?
Motion.
May I have a second? I'll make the second. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor? Excuse me. All in favor?
Opening for a second?
Yeah.
Any opposed? Is there anyone from the public that would like to step up and address the council for any items? Please step forward.
Good evening. My name is John Timchak, and I am a board member with the Lake Panorama Lake Association. A while back, I came here to discuss the survey that was done and the wall that we have there. I know we've been talking about this. I am a accident reconstructionist. Been doing it for probably more than 20 years now. We found out when we did the survey that the road was in the wrong spot. All right, we put a wall up. We're retaining soil and preventing it from eroding down into our roadway, which is a township roadway. My issue is we were advised that the wall is a safety hazard. All right, it's on an uphill slope. I've been doing reconstruction accidents for a long time. Anybody can hit anything at any time, all right? Nothing is infallible, all right? It's ridiculous to me to believe that this is going on. To take a wall out and keep a second wall above it. That first wall is a retaining wall to prevent the slope from coming down. We've had problems, rocks coming down to the roadway, and the township has not even attempted to fix the problem. All right, we stepped up not only to beautify our community. This community is about family and making things look nicer and help out, and that's what we're trying to do in our community. And once again, I posted the drawing a while back. You guys had it. All right, it was posted with you guys a while back. So that's all my comment is for right now. So you get an idea that you have a person that was hired by the township as an engineer to tell us to take a wall out and move it up further up a slope. I'm no engineer, but common sense prevails here that it's not going to work. All right, and I want to know where the township came up with this idea to move a wall further up a hill without it being straightened. I don't understand how you could come up with something like that, and I want the township to address this matter. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that have any comments? Please step forward.
Hi, my name is Nancy Rapasardi, and I live in Lake Panorama as well. I moved up there with my family about 17 years ago, and I did get on the board at one point because our playground was splinters, rusted, falling apart, and that was my mission, that I wanted like a nice place for the kids. We did that out of our own money, but it bothers me to hear how the wall that's part of the township road there was collapsing in, and we paid for it. And it just bothers me that the town wouldn't pay for it. You would rather close the park to the children than to fix it. So we fixed it. Looks great. Nobody's asking for money. But now the sign, the wall is beautiful. I don't understand why you would want to take that down. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And just for me to address, I actually did have a long conversation with somebody from your community the other day, and as I explained, yes, we get the recommendations from our engineer. Not necessarily saying that we all agree with with engineers, just like with any other profession. But in the meantime, our business administrator, who was not able to be present this evening, is actually the main person that is communicating between the engineer and hopefully with the lake community. As you can see, our mayor is back from his surgery, so he is also available. It just happens to be one of those items that the council does not address. It's not something that we can address. We cannot just say, leave the wall and vote on it. It becomes, it's a different issue where we don't actually have the power to do that. And unless our attorney has any other comments on that.
No, I've been speaking with the business administrator regarding this matter, and I'll be in touch with the lake community shortly.
Are you still trying to work it out and come up with a resolve for this? Because if they take that wall down, then the town's going to have to just put another wall up.
They were looking for a different type of a resolve with the wall itself. And what happened was the way the survey came, it showed that the wall was actually a little further in the road. I mean, I can go by, I've gone by several times to see it because of my business, and the wall does looks great, looks fine. Doesn't look like it's in the road. It just happens to be, I think a lot of the roads in town turn out to be that way because from the age of the homes and the communities, the roads were dirt roads, and then they just kind of became the permanent roads. They got paved, and, it's like, it looks good. I think there might be a concern as to whether or not, if our township plow comes down, if it happens to take the wall out. I mean, that was a conversation I heard. But like I said, it's not something that the council can act on. So it does actually go, it does take a different path. We're more than welcome to hear you come here and tell us about it. We're talking to everybody about it. But it is something that's out of our control to change. It is. So you can come.
Mr. Volker.
The business administrator. Which, yeah.
Bill Partridge, Lake Panorama. I was the point of contact with Chuck Volker for quite a while. When I presented the survey to him, he laughed and he said, "How old is this?" And I laughed with him. I said, "Chuck, this is the brand new survey. The road is approximately 30 feet.
How many? Excuse me.
30.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's supposed to be up the mountain. The only option we were given was to move the wall 3 feet up, which, as I said to Chuck, it makes no sense. It's a retaining wall holding the landslides, rocks, and clearing the drain from ice buildup. Moving it 3 feet up, there's no engineering sense behind that. Corey is not an engineer for that aspect, okay? Something else has to be addressed with this. Snow plowing was mentioned. I've plowed snow commercially for 30 years. Never once has a snow management program pushed snow uphill and cover a drain. That is a poor excuse for wanting to move the wall. Mr. Allberger, well aware of snow removal process for township, okay? Guys, it's doing a job that the town, no one in particular, we're calling it the town, never addressed for our community. The wall needs to stay. It's providing a safety aspect for that hill and ice. There was not one ice buildup this past winter. We had a terrible winter. Not one ice buildup on that intersection all year. The wall has to stay. It's there for a reason. And if you make us take it down, I don't think the town's going to come and put it back up. That's a foolish thought. Thank you.
Thank you. And
It's a bad intersection there for ice to be building up because they're both coming downhill from the Y there. So something would really have to be done.
It's always been an ice buildup issue because the drain was also covered. The town put that drain in many years ago, and the land just keeps coming down, and it covered it. It was never reclaimed until we did it and put the wall on. Spoke with a Vernon officer recently, and he commented that they've had no issues up there. We had John Kosh here a couple weeks ago, and he said he didn't have to come. He didn't say, but he did not have to come and solve that all year last year because it was no issue. It was addressed and maintained properly with the wall being there. It's not just we've decided to, let's put a wall here. It's there for a reason.
Well, you know, at the last meeting, somebody was discussing the safety-wise. But if you put a speed bump before that to slow traffic down, I think there would be less likelihood of people running into the wall.
I
I mean,
don't,
is there some way to mitigate that aspect? 'Cause I think somebody brought that up. Maybe it was Chuck or somebody.
You have a, call it 200-foot line of sight to that wall. 25-mile-an-hour speed limit going uphill. What's the reality of somebody running into this wall?
I don't know,
at
that's
all,
what they
like
were talking
John
about at
said.
the last meeting. That was a big concern. It was lost around. So if you can mitigate something.
I don't think a speed bump would be a good idea on your way down the hill. No, I'm just.
When you're approaching it, I mean, I would think that that's what they're afraid of, going straight into the wall.
Right, which is unrealistic. The drain is first, there's a dip, there's another 3 feet, as well as there's telephone poles closer in the roadway than what the wall sits.
Yeah, we have the
Telephone
pictures of them.
Yeah, yeah. The safety concern that was brought up, it's non-existent. There's no safety concern to this wall. Taking it down is the concern, because then everything comes back down, and we're right back to where we were for many years. That's the issue.
Yeah, so have you heard back from administration lately? Or, I mean, is there still an ongoing communication between?
No, there's nothing, because the last presentation from Chuck was move it 3 feet. There's no use in doing that. I kind of threw my hands up. I had gone to Allison to ask about getting the permit for the sign, which was to move forward. And Allison appreciatively was very honest and said, I'll take your $50 for the application, but I'm going to deny it. You're not going to get the sign. So I kind of threw my hands up. There was no further discussion. It was going nowhere. We hit a wall.
And I know Tony Honori's trying to get up there to speak, but I just thought I'd say a conversation I had with him was that the recommendation was that front wall be moved back. And I said to him, I don't know if the engineer has any other recommendations, that I would bring it up with Mr. Volker. So because we don't necessarily even communicate with the engineer. I happened to speak to the engineer one day. He was here in passing, which is when he said that was his recommendation. But what happened is, and that's where Mr. Volker was going to be speaking with him to see if there was any other alternative.
She looks like she has a thought. You look like
No,
you
I'd
have a
like to
thought.
see it resolved.
So would- so
The
would we.
dialogue continue with it.
Okay. Well, then,
Have 400
Chuck,
residents that live up there.
we got a lot of residents sitting here.
So you're really, okay, 402. It should be resolved.
So
And
how
the
do
town
we-
should work with you. That's what I would like to see.
Unfortunately, we're at the mercy of you communicating or administration communicating with you. Now, I'm not saying you communicate with them, administration communicating with you, and maybe trying, if they can, come up with an alternative to what the engineer's recommendation was, if there is any.
What about the fact that we're not in agreeing with what the engineer is saying?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is maybe there's an alternative that the engineer would come up with. But that's,
Okay.
you
What
can
do
see,
you think about turning it back to a private road?
say, no.
I'm not opposed to that. I'm the road chairman for Lake Panorama.
Not opposed to it.
Yeah.
Give it back.
Yeah, you say that you plow it anyway.
We do. We're paying
Well, the
our
loop-
contractor
the
to
winding
maintain it.
hill
I mean, the
and-
town goes up there. Don't get me wrong.
The
but-
Winding Hill and Panorama, that whole loop is done by the town. I
Right.
don't know how would that affect busing? Does it at all? I don't know.
Send buses up to Highland.
Right, but I'm just saying is, but when Highland Lakes goes up, I don't know, are they going on the private roads or are they staying on the main roads? Just a question, that's all.
With the legal consequences, but that might be a real alternative here.
That road was a panorama road back in the day, and it was turned over to the township many years ago.
And I have no problem, the property is township property, is working out like a 99-year lease for some small pittance, whether
Right,
it's
there's
$1 or
lots of
$5 for
alternatives that you
99
can
years.
discuss.
If that's an option, look, that's something that I've heard floating out here, but was never actually presented.
I don't know
I'd
what
love
the
to hear
unintended
that.
consequences are, but I have
So can we
no
put Mr.
problem
Kadish in
helping them out
charge of
that
this?
way.
Well, we already did that for Canal Road several years ago.
What's that?
We gave up the road.
That was the the road you abandoned.
We abandoned it. Well, we also did it for around the corner off Maple Grange.
Masker.
Masker.
But those are roads that are not traveled.
Well, it was travel at one time.
I'd like to investigate that. What are the unintended consequences? Can we legally do that?
Well, that's,
If the lake community is going to be favorable to that, but would we have 50 other people in here saying, no, we don't want the town, we don't want to give it back? I don't know, but that's going to be up to your lake community.
Right, in my opinion, no, you would not get that, because everybody knows you turn onto Winding Hill, you fight your way up the hill, and as soon as you get to a private road, you travel home safely.
Has that solution been put forth previously? Will you
No.
guys take it over?
No, it
So it's
hasn't.
something we can look into?
Yeah, I'll discuss it with Chuck and Corey.
Now, also along this, the fines, the letter from zoning and building, that if that wall is not down by Thursday, $1,000 a week, we need to make sure.
Is it this Thursday? I thought it was 30 days
It-
from last.
What's this Thursday? 24th. Yeah, the 24th, which is Thursday. So if this is ongoing, we need to make sure that that does not happen.
Well, if we're in negotiations and we're going to do an investigation, I mean, we wouldn't start fining you $1,000 if we're trying to find a solution.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear.
Common sense.
And
What I wanted to hear.
our attorneys, when he said Chuck and Corey, that is the township engineer and the business administrator
Yep.
that he'll be speaking with.
All right, Chuck has my number. Chuck knows he can call me anytime. And I communicate very well with Chuck. I'm happy to hear from him soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Anthony Norrie, how was everybody this evening?
Just wonderful. And you?
How's everybody? Great. I sent a letter via email. Did you receive it, Mr. Cage?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
I sent a note to the mayor, to the council.
With the pictures?
I know Mrs. Ohms got it. Did you get it? Did you get it?
Pictures of
Right,
the
with pictures, right.
of the
My
tower.
Yeah,
you got that. Yeah.
You weren't here last week, so
That's right.
I'll put you up to snuff a little bit. My letter was a continuation of my time at the dais here, speaking on the behalf of myself and the community concerning our situation, where we had do some remediation, which was on the township road, and we took care of it. It was just like Mrs. Rapisardi said, it was a safety issue for our children, so we took care of it and addressed it at our own cost. The second part of my letter stated about a dozen and a half years ago, maybe a few more than that, we had a meeting with the township over communications. The police, fire, and emergency services were not getting communications properly to the northwest corner of the town. I'm pretty sure you were well involved with that with Mr. Burrell and.
My undoing.
Yes. That's why I put that in the letter. And
All I
don't know if you read
did
it.
was introduce the ordinance so it could be discussed.
Right. And that's part of my question. I feel that Lake Panorama needs to be on the agenda. I think we need to be on the agenda. There's a lot of ideas and there's a lot of information. There's a lot of things going around that we need to discuss and that we could discuss. And to be perfectly honest with you, you're our elected officials. We're your constituents. We need to be heard in longer than a 3-minute session. And I understand the mayor and I understand the business administration. Yeah, exactly. We didn't do everything right. We weren't ignorant. We were ignorant. We weren't arrogant. I've heard that we were arrogant. We're not arrogant. We're not arrogant people. I understand that. But to this day, the tower is on private property. You own the municipality owns the property, but we own the roads getting to that tower. and your emergency services benefit from that tower, and everybody uses our private roadways with no problem whatsoever. If an overweight truck has to go up there and change that tower, that's not a problem. Nobody calls us and says, can we use your road? Nobody says anything like that. We gave the town explicit permission to use our private roads. All we're asking, this is not an issue with Silver Spruce. This is not an issue with the SCMUA. This is not an issue with the DEP and the dumping in Vernon that's going on now. This is us with you. You're our elected officials. We're your constituents. We don't have a roadblock. We don't have a state, county, or federal law involved. This is 400 people who put a wall up in a community that used to be on our road, that we own the road. The Edsels gave the roads in the middle 70s to the municipality so the buses would come through. In Lake Wallkill, the buses do not come through. Every child has to be picked up at the front of the lake. We do not want that. If that's what it's going to be, then I guess so be it. We have a very limited budget. Everybody talks about taxes. Everybody talks about money and everything else. We run a community on $150,000. 30% of our community is delinquent. 30%. That means 70% of our community is making up 100% of our monies. 100% of our lake dues are $600. That is very reasonable. Very reasonable. We collect our own garbage. We collect our own recycling. We pave our own roads. And we remove our own snow. I mean, we do a considerable amount of things with that little bit of money. And we are very, very frugal. For us to take down that wall when we spend $7,000 and we have a $5,000 or $8,000 sign coming, this is a $15,000 capital project. We have to answer to 400 different people. How are we going to tell them we spent $15,000 on something that we're not allowed to have? It's a quandary for me, and I'm asking you, ladies and gentlemen, we're your constituents. Put us on the agenda. Let us get this through. Let's get this through. Let's get it done. Let's get it over with. I've got pictures. I got all kinds of things. Like Arlo Guthrie said in this, I got arrows and implements and a paragraph explaining each one on the back of each photo. I don't want to do that. I want you guys and ladies and gentlemen to say, hey, Mr. Inari, let's work it out. Lake Panorama, let's work it out. That's all I want. That's it. The wall is beautiful. We have homes that are in disrepair. We have homes that have burned out for 15 years. 15 years, there's a burned out home in the bottom of one of our roads that has not been touched. Not been touched. Mayor Shortway said that we're collecting money on vacant. I applaud that. There's three houses around the corner from me. It's a vacant home, and there's 5 children living next to it. The stairs are so unsafe. If one of the children ever even ventured up there, boom, they're done. It falls down. That house has been there for 12 years. We have a used car lot in our community. We have plenty of things going on that we don't publicize and we don't talk about. We have a wall that we want to put a sign up that makes everybody feel a little bit better in our community when you come in and the real estate comes in and looks at it and says, oh, wow, at least they're starting to turn Lake Panorama around. It's a sad day that we cannot get together over 3 or 4 feet and a piece of concrete structure. The engineer did his survey. I get it. He thinks it's unsafe. It's in the row. I know. It's in the right of way. It's not in the right of way. It's in the right damn smack in the middle. We know that. Okay? We know that completely. So let's deal with it. I have plenty of suggestions. I'm full of ideas on what we could do. We could put stop signs on each corner. It's only bothering us. It's only bothering us. Put a stop sign on one side, a stop sign on the other side. Nobody's going to hit the wall. If they do, they blow the stop sign. And it's only Lake Panorama. It's not going to be at the flats, so where everybody's going to be inconvenienced. It's just our residents. Just our residents. 400 people. I mean, Mr. Oberger, have you seen the wall?
Looks good.
It looks good, right. It looks good. I was hoping that when I sent the correspondence, and I'm a constituent, to an elected official, that I would have gotten some response. And I thank Mrs. Ohms. I applaud you for answering it. Mrs. Murphy, you know how I feel. We spoke many times. Many times. I didn't have the opportunity to speak to you, yourself, or Mr. Van Tassel. I was hoping to speak with them. And I didn't send you one, sorry.
And just so you know, Dan's story got a hold of me.
Oh, okay.
So.
But the thing is, I don't want to drag this out. We don't want to drag this out. We have other issues that we have that
Believe
are very
me, we don't want to drag this out either.
Right, that are more important.
Chuck, and if you don't get it resolved, come back.
I hope so. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice evening.
Yes, come back
Thank you.
and let us know how you make out.
Is there anyone else from the public that have any comments? Please step forward. Seeing no one, may I have a motion to close? May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Council comments. Council
Mayor's
member-
report? Mayor's report?
Oh, did I skip you? Did you?
My only report is a letter that's going to Senator Bob Smith tomorrow. He's the chairman of the Senate Environment and Energy Committees. And I'd like to read it to the council because hopefully by the next meeting, the council will have 2 resolutions passed of 2 changes in our state statutes that I'm requesting that the legislature take forth. This is being sent by the Environmental Commissioner Mike Fury and myself. We are writing to you with this specific request as it relates to Senate Bill 1683. This bill amends the existing law to expand the requirement for background checks to a broader range of persons involved in the solid waste industry, such as salespersons, consultants, and brokers. The bill also subjects persons or business concerns engaging in soil and debris recycling services to the same regulation and oversight under law as which applies to the solid waste industry. Just so you know, this bill has been laying in committee for almost 2 years. However, this bill will not cure current concerns with the dumping of dirt, solid waste in a residential zone contrary to a stop work order resulting from the failure of submitting plans and obtaining permits. I have requested that our state officials enact such legislation, elevating such action to a crime of the 3rd degree for owner-operators and 4th degrees for drivers delivering described materials in the above manner. When probable cause is present, sworn local law enforcement officers will have the authority to arrest actors who knowingly, purposely, or recklessly commit such action. We desire to be part of the deliberations to bring this law to the state of New Jersey. Vernon Township is located in the Highlands and is being invaded by trucks transporting and disposing tons of solid waste, potentially hazardous waste, soil, dirt, and other similar materials originating from outside our county and our state borders, including New York City. These materials are delivered into residential neighborhoods in defiance of stop work orders. These materials have the potential to contaminate the water for not only Vernon residents, but communities and cities such as Newark. We are frustrated by the inability to identify the responsible agency or board to investigate this matter and or take action. Pass the buck, and it is a local matter, are common reactions by state and county entities who claim that they do not have jurisdiction or authority. The county health departments receive funds to enhance New Jersey DEP pollution control efforts under the authority of the County Environmental Health Act, or SEA. Their authority is limited under the grant. Municipalities do not receive funding, but the responsibility to enforce state stop work orders has fallen on the municipal property taxpayer. Under SEA, the county has the following authority, 7:1H-2.2, duties and powers. A, the county department and local health agency shall investigate citizen complaints and provide public information and citizen education services in all matters concerning environmental health. The county department and local health agency shall monitor the various state statutes, rules, and regulations concerning environmental health, shall report any violations of said statutes, rules, and regulations to the department for enforcement, shall gather evidence of said violations as required, and shall provide witnesses for any court action as needed. B, the county department and local health agency may maintain an action in a court of competent jurisdiction against any other person to enforce or to restrain the violation of any statute, regulation, or ordinance which is designated to prevent or minimize pollution, impairment, or destruction of the environment as provided in the Environmental Rights Act, New Jersey, State Statutes 2A:35A-1. Congressman Josh Gottheimer and Senator Steve Orho are assisting in our efforts to stop the onslaught. They should be applauded because they are coming together in a bipartisan manner to solve a potentially significant public health crisis. The Vernon Township Council passed an ordinance, and this mayor signed the same, to regulate soil fill operations. Funds will be in next year's budget for a truck enforcement unit, provided the council approves. Summonses are issued, but the defense manipulates the judicial system for adjournments, and a tort claim has been filed in an effort to stop our efforts to protect our community. This alarming situation demonstrates the need for state legislation defining the operation, maintenance, storage, disposal, and transportation of such materials into residential neighborhoods when stop work orders are in effect as a crime of the third degree. Such legislation will allow a police department to effect these arrests based on probable cause and potential incarceration if found guilty. Please join us in this fight and support the necessary legislation that will arm municipal governments to safeguard our communities from such potentially dangerous conditions. That's going to be sent out. We're also sending it to the county health, because it's also a cry like, if they received $178,000, where are they? Why is this falling on the township, municipal taxpayer, to do all this work, to go to court? It should be by the county and the state, not the municipality. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have council comments. Councilmember Allberger?
No comment.
No comment. Councilmember Kadish?
I've been speaking to Gottheimer's office as well, and they're very receptive and very responsive. As you know, we were kind of curious about how do we get fallen trees out of the river, and I discovered a program in Orange County that exists already. It was started in 1984 by Ben Gilman, U.S. Representative, Congressman, and it involves a consortium of 5 towns, of which Warwick is one, Pine Island, and a shared agreement between Orange County, those 5 towns, and the USDA. Together, they contribute $60,000 a year, so I guess that's about $10,000 per town. It began by a U.S. Corps of Engineers making a study of the Wallkill River. The New York DCE does an inspection for fallen trees every 2 years, and it's my understanding that Kevin Sumner, the Middletown USDA conservation agent, administers the program. The question I have for Josh Gottheimer is, can we use that bill as a model? And we'd have to form a consortium with anybody who was involved with the Wawayanda River, the Bochuck, and the Wallkill. So I think we can get 5 towns together if the council has agreed to that. It would take some time to put that into effect. What was amazing for me is that the way they cleared the trees out of the river using a helicopter, same way they brought in the boardwalk back years ago. So to me, I think that's a good area that we should work on. And I should present that to the Environmental Commission. I was also called by one of our environmental members to please meet with her over at the condos. It appears that when the pipeline went through, the recycling center was dismantled by the pipeline and then given instructions that it could not be paved over again to put the recycling center there again. So they tried to put it at the where some of the private houses are, and of course they got a NIMBY response, and they're threatened with legal action, and it wasn't zoned for it, and all sorts of things. Well, since then, what's happened? Goes in the garbage, taken to SCUMA. All garbage has to stay in Sussex County. Can't go out of the county anymore. So I think we've got an issue that we should resolve somehow. I thought the best way to deal with it would be having you send a letter reminding people of our recycling center. Perhaps another way of dealing with it would be putting a couple of small containers in a place that's acceptable for the residents over there. But I just think it's silly to send all these things off to the landfill to be there permanently and not recycled. As you may have read, some of these plastics break down very easily in the ocean. But then the molecules are in the fish flesh, and of course people eat the fish, and other fish, of course, eat the fish. So I'm not sure we want these molecules in our flesh. So it's really a problem. I wasn't aware of it until it was brought to my attention. I met with the business administrator over there, along with the president of the condo association and one other person, and I think they were very concerned about it, but also don't quite know what to do with it. So it's an issue that I bring to everybody. Perhaps we can resolve that one too.
Is there anything else?
No, that's fine.
Councilmember Ohms?
No comment.
I just wanted to make a comment on Mr. Kadish's. You're talking about Great Gorge Village, that they had a recycling center and then it was dismantled? And is that what you're talking about? And you're suggesting that the town do something? And the reason I question it is because maybe over a year ago, I was approached by someone who basically said the town took our recycling center away. And I went to the mayor. I'm like, what are they talking about? And to my knowledge, we don't have any jurisdiction over their waste over there. As a matter of fact, I made a point of seeing who their company is. Somebody from out of town, like not anybody up here in Sussex County. So I would imagine that would be something that they would have to institute. And I know the residents were upset that they wanted to have the recycling center, but I think it might be up to them with their association. And if their trash company is accepting the trash that way, I mean, that's another, because there are some that do, and they separate it. I would like to thank you for making the suggestion, at least for the roadway for Lake Panorama. Maybe it's an option. And as far as with the township, I'm happy to hear that we're heading towards the automation with some of the departments, and that would include, I'm hoping, like fire prevention. So if somebody is applying for their smoke detector certificate, they could apply for it online, and it could help ease the process without having to come down to the town, as well as being able to, if you've applied for a permit at the building department, be able to check to see if your permit is in fact ready rather than having to call or come down. So that would be, a step in the right direction, at least for some convenience. So other than that, I have nothing else. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting's adjourned.